Times 10 a.m., November 24th, 2023, just one day after Thanksgiving. In the quiet town of Warner Robbins, a man calmly called 911 and said, "I just got home, and my wife has taken her own life." But when police stepped into the small bedroom at 202 Wake Forest Drive, they froze. No gun. No shell casings. Only a woman's body, beaten beyond recognition, blood splattered across the ceiling, and a husband standing on the porch, eerily calm, as if nothing had happened. This wasn't suicide. This was a cold, calculated murder, and the man who made the 911 call was the killer. What could drive someone to destroy the person who loved them most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss the rest of this chilling story. The woman lying motionless on that blood-soaked bed was Lucille Anne McManus, or as her neighbors affectionately called her, Miss Anne. She was the kind of person you never forgot after just one meeting with that gentle, heartwarming smile. The kind of neighbor who could make an entire street feel brighter just by stepping out onto her porch each morning. At 63, she still tended to her little garden every day, remembered everyone's birthday in the neighborhood, and never forgot to bring cookies for the kids during the holidays. But few knew that behind her closed doors each night, Miss Anne would sit quietly by the window, staring into the empty space beside a cup of cold coffee, a silence born from losing the only love of her life. It wasn't loud, but it ate away at her little by little. She just wanted someone to watch movies with, to share dinner with, that's all, recalled her granddaughter, Jessica, a statement that later brought tears to the courtroom. Then one day, Jessica noticed her holding a phone, hesitating. "Sweetie, they say you can meet people online now. Do you think I should try it?" A simple question, yet it would open the door to the darkest chapter of her life. When Miss Anne opened the Tinder app, a whole new world appeared before her. Profile pictures, sweet introductions, smiling faces glowing through screens. She chose a photo taken in her garden and wrote a modest bio. A woman who loves flowers and cooking, hoping to find a friend to talk to. Just a few days later, a man named Brian McManus appeared in her suggested matches. She said his British accent sounded warm and sincere. He claimed to be a former London police officer, widowed, looking to start over in America. A man who once wore a badge and swore to uphold justice. Who would ever suspect him? They started texting, calling, then meeting in person. Brian was charming, attentive, and said all the right things. Most of all, he made her believe she still deserved to be loved. The late-blooming romance filled the neighborhood with joy. Everyone said, "Miss Anne deserves to be happy again," and just 3 months later she said yes to his proposal. A small wedding. A radiant smile. The tender gaze of a woman who believed she'd finally found peace again. No one knew that in that wedding photo. The man standing beside her had planned every move, to enter her home, her heart, and ultimately take her life. So before you think you've met the right one, stop for a moment. If someone seems too perfect, too fast, too eager to claim you, be careful. What do you think of his online dating for older people? A chance or a trap? Share your thoughts below, because the next story might just change the way you see those sweet words on a screen forever. Miss Anne's love story entered a new chapter, or at least that's what she believed. The wedding was small, held right in the backyard where bright yellow daisies bloomed along the fence. Brian wore a grey suit, smiled softly, and held her hand in front of friends and neighbors. The whole neighborhood rejoiced for the woman who had lost so much, yet somehow found joy again. But this wasn't the beginning of happiness. It was a survival contract, signed by the innocence of a woman who believed in goodness. Soon after moving in, Brian began taking control. He changed the Wi-Fi password, kept the safe keys, reviewed bills, and accidentally reset the password to her bank account. Miss Anne simply thought, he just wants to help keep things organized. But those living with her, granddaughter Jessica and 2 great-grandkids, could feel something wasn't right. Brian didn't fit in. He avoided family meals and grew irritated whenever the kids laughed. He'd look at them like they were a nuisance, Jessica later recalled. Months passed and Brian started lying more often. He went on business trips to Florida, first for a few days, then for a week. Each time he talked about projects and clients, but no one knew where he went or what he did. In truth, he was having an affair with a married woman in Florida. The man who once said, "I want a sincere new beginning," was now living a double life, both husband and betrayer. At home, Brian became short-tempered and cold. He was no longer the charming British gentleman everyone first met. One day, neighbors overheard shouting from the house, "I don't need anyone telling me how to live here." Brian's voice was icy, threatening. Later, they saw Miss Anne step outside, eyes red from crying, still forcing a smile when someone waved. "It's okay," she said softly. "He's just stressed." Like many women who believe that love can fix a broken person, she kept making excuses for him. But this love wasn't built on trust. It was built on manipulation and motives. By marrying Miss Anne, Brian had filed for a green card to stay in the US, and once his paperwork was approved, everything changed and he became distant, cold, even mocking the very woman who gave him a home and a name. Miss Anne began to sense something was wrong, but her gentle heart chose silence. In her journal, she wrote a short line, "I'm not sure he loves me anymore, but I'm afraid if I say it out loud, everything will fall apart." It was the last thing she ever wrote about her husband. She didn't know that the man she was trying to save was already paving the way to her end. Every trip to Florida, every secret text, every time he stared blankly as she cried, it was all a rehearsal for the ending he had planned. Have you ever met someone who made you feel both sympathy and fear, but you stayed quiet? Afraid of being called paranoid? Share your thoughts below, because in the next chapter everything explodes. One misplaced message, just a few lines, will shatter the entire web of lies Brian had built over 2 years, and lead Miss Anne straight to her tragic fate. One quiet afternoon in late November 2023, the little house on Wake Forest Drive was unusually still. Miss Anne was cleaning up after lunch, the scent of dish soap still on her hands when her phone buzzed. A message from Brian. "My love, I miss you tonight. I want to hold you for a long time." She froze. Read the message again. And again. Then her heart clenched. Because in this house there was no one Brian ever called my love but her. A few seconds later, another message appeared. "Sorry, wrong person. Wrong person." 2 simple words, sharp as a knife, slicing through the trust she'd spent 2 years trying to protect. Miss Anne didn't scream. She didn't throw her phone. She just sat down, hands trembling, tears falling onto the glowing screen. The image of the caring, devoted husband shattered completely, and with that shattering came anger, shame, a deep, bone-cutting sense of betrayal. That night when Brian walked through the door, she was waiting for him in the living room. On the table, her phone, the message still open. "Who is she?" she asked, her voice calm and frighteningly calm. "She's no one." "You misunderstood," he said, avoiding her eyes. "You're lying. I gave you everything. A home, a family, a chance to stay here. And you betrayed me?" The argument rose, voices sharp, echoing through the house, and then silence. In that silence, something dark flickered in Brian's mind. He no longer saw the woman who had taken him in, only a threat. Because in her rage, Miss Anne had said the one thing that terrified him, "I'm going to immigration. You lied to me. You'll be sent back to England, and I'll tell them everything." That was the final straw. Brian knew that with one report, everything he'd built, the green card, the residency, the affair in Florida Key, would crumble. And in the mind of a selfish, arrogant man, she was no longer a wife and not even a person. She was a problem to eliminate. From that moment, he began to plan. He bought a rubber mallet from a local store and hid it in the closet. He took the dog for walks, scouting dark corners and drainage ditches, places to hide evidence. He practiced sounding calm, innocent, controlled. Every detail calculated. Meanwhile, Miss Anne believed the storm would pass. She thought they could talk it out, that every marriage hit rough patches. She still made dinner, still saved him a plate, still forced a weak smile when Jessica asked, "Are you okay, Grandma?" "Yes, dear. We just need a little time." But she didn't know. The man she was waiting to forgive had already left his humanity behind, and that time she spoke of was now being counted hour by hour. If you've ever received a message that made your heart drop to the floor, what would you do? Stay silent like Miss Anne, or confront it all? Share your thoughts below, because in the next part, Brian's calm facade will finally crack. And within just 20 fateful minutes, America will hear the coldest 911 call of 2023. Morning of November 24th, 2023, just one day after Thanksgiving. The small town of Warner Robbins still smelled of roasted turkey and autumn leaves rustling on porches. But inside the house, at 202 Wake Forest Drive, a dark plan was already set in motion. At 8:45 a.m., Brian took the dog out for a walk, carrying a small gym bag. A neighbor saw him wave and smile faintly. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" No one knew that inside that bag lay the weapon of a murder. When he returned around 9 a.m., Miss Anne was in the bedroom, fresh from a shower, her hair still damp. No one heard a scream, only the dull, brutal thuds that followed, fast, hard, merciless. The rubber mallet came down again and again. The first blow to intimidate, the second to control, the rest to end her life. Miss Anne collapsed onto the bed, blood soaking through the pillow. In her final panic, she clawed at Brian's hands, leaving scratches that would later expose him. Minutes after the killing, he began his performance. He washed his hands, changed his shirt, placed the mallet in the bag, locked the door, and stepped outside to walk the dog, as if nothing had happened. A neighbor's security camera captured him at the drainage ditch behind the house, bending down and tossing something into the murky water. No one paid attention. At 9:10 a.m., the 911 call came in. "911, what's your emergency?" "I just got home. And my wife. She killed herself. There's blood everywhere." His voice was eerily calm. No trembling, no cracking, not a single tear. When police arrived, Brian stood in the yard, hands in his pockets, expression blank. He repeated the same story, smooth and rehearsed. "I was out walking the dog. When I came back, she was dead. She shot herself. But the officers needed only one glance to know something was wrong. There was no gun, no shell casings, no smell of gunpowder. The room was a nightmare of blood. The walls, the blankets, even the ceiling splattered red. Miss Anne lay on the bed, unclothed, her head severely injured. It was impossible for a suicide to look like this. "If she shot herself," Detective Carmen Thompson asked coldly, "with what?" Brian hesitated, then muttered, I don't know. Maybe she threw the gun away." The excuse was so absurd the officers just exchanged glances. They didn't see a grieving husband. They saw a killer. That very day, police sealed the scene, collected DNA samples, and retrieved footage from nearby cameras. One officer noticed something odd. Brian's shoes were still damp, as if he'd just stepped through water. Tracing his walking route, investigators found footprints leading to the drainage ditch, and there, a few hours later, they pulled from the muddy water a blood-stained rubber mallet and a bent cell phone. The blood matched Miss Anne's DNA. The phone belonged to Brian. His suicide story collapsed instantly. The grieving husband was unmasked as one of the coldest killers in Warner Robbins history. If you were the detective that day, realizing within minutes that the man who called for help was the murderer, what would you have done? Share your thoughts below, because in the next part, we'll follow the investigation, from forensic evidence and GPS data to the historic trial where Brian was finally forced to face his own monstrous crime. That night, the town of Warner Robbins didn't sleep. News spread fast. Husband who reported wife suicide now suspected of murder. Police worked through the night, reconstructing every minute of the timeline. From security cameras, phone GPS data, to every drop of blood inside the house. Everything pointed to one man, Brian McManus. When he was brought to the station, Brian remained stone-faced. He asked for coffee, folded his arms, and said, "I told you already. My wife killed herself. I didn't do anything." Detective Carmen Thompson didn't rush. She opened her laptop and played the neighbor's camera footage, Brian walking along the drainage ditch, bending down and throwing something into the water. She paused the video. "This is you, isn't it?" Brian said nothing, but his eyes began to flicker. When divers later recovered a blood-stained rubber mallet and a broken phone, the interrogation took a sharp turn. Forensics confirmed the blood on the mallet belonged to Miss Anne, and the DNA under her fingernails matched Brian's. The scratches on his hands, the marks of a woman's final fight for her life. That's when Brian started changing his story. "I think someone broke into the house. Maybe Maybe it was my step-granddaughter's boyfriend. But cell phone data showed Jessica and her boyfriend were 20 miles away at the time of the murder, so he tried again. It must have been a robbery. They killed her and ran. Police checked every door and window, no forced entry, no signs of theft. Lie by lie. His story collapsed, layer after layer, until there was nowhere left to run. July 2025, the historic trial of Houston County began. The courtroom was packed. Media filled every corner. Prosecutor Eric Edwards opened, "The defendant is a manipulator, a man who exploited the love of a kind woman for his own dark gain. And when she discovered the truth, he killed her, not in rage but by design." Over 6 days the jury saw all the evidence. The camera footage of Brian tossing the mallet. Forensic results from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Text messages proving his affair. And the tearful testimony of Jessica. "My grandma just wanted to be loved. She didn't deserve to die like that." Brian sat still, eyes fixed on the floor, expressionless. When the prosecution gave its final statement, the courtroom fell silent. She died, believing in goodness. And that goodness, he used it to hide the monster he truly was. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. All 12 members agreed, guilty of premeditated murder. Judge Edward D. Lukemeyer delivered the sentence, "You crushed another human being's skull. You will spend the rest of your life behind bars, Brian McManus, and life in prison without parole." As officers handcuffed him and led him away, no one in the courtroom shed a tear. Only the photo of Miss Anne smiling softly from years ago remained, a woman of light, gone forever, but leaving behind a lesson none would forget. Do you think life in prison is enough for someone like Brian? Share your thoughts below, because in the next part, we'll hear from those who were left behind, her family, her neighbors, and the entire town of Warner Robbins, the one still living with the pain that bears her name, Miss Anne. The courtroom had fallen silent. The verdict was read. The killer was led away in the clinking of cold handcuffs. But the pain didn't end there. It lingered, in the small house at 202 Wake Forest Drive, where children's laughter once filled the air, and now only silence and emptiness remained. The aftermath. In the days after the trial, Jessica Terrell, Miss Anne's granddaughter, returned to the house to pack up her grandmother's belongings. The kitchen still held a half-finished jar of cookies. On the table lay an unsent birthday card. Her scent still lingered in the air, and Jessica couldn't hold back her tears. "Grandma always told me, you must believe in the good," but it was that very goodness that made her trust the wrong man. The entire town of Warner Robbins was still in shock. An elderly neighbor, Martha, said quietly, "She was the sunshine of this street. Every morning she waved. Every holiday she brought cookies for everyone. None of us can believe she died at the hands of the man she called her husband." In the months that followed, the town organized memorial gatherings for Miss Anne. Flowers covered the white fence where she once grew her beloved roses. Someone placed a small sign among them, "The light never goes out. Lessons from a tragedy." But the case also raised a painful question. Why are kind, gentle people so often the easiest prey for emotional predators? Experts called it the romance scam syndrome, when loneliness and the longing for companionship make older adults more likely to trust, to ignore the red flags waving right before their eyes. Miss Anne's story became the face of thousands more like hers, people who only wanted to feel loved again, never realizing they were opening their doors to danger. What haunted people most wasn't just how she died, but how kind she remained until the very end. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't lash out. She only wanted to talk, to make things right. Her compassion made people both love her and ache for her. Love her for her warmth and ache because the world can be so cruel to those who are good. Her legacy. After the trial, Jessica stood before the cameras, voice trembling. "My grandmother should have been sitting on her porch watching the kids play, not lying in a cold grave. I just wish I could turn back time and tell her, 'Grandma, please be careful with that man.'" Her words brought the crowd to tears. From that day, Lucille Anne McManus became a symbol in the community. Her name led the Love But Beware campaign, raising awareness about romance scams and hidden abuse in fake relationships. Her story wasn't retold as a tragedy, but as a warning, a beacon for others. People still say, Miss Anne was killed because she believed in goodness. But the truth is, it's that very belief that keeps her memory alive, not as a victim, but as a light guiding those lost in the darkness of loneliness. If you were Miss Anne, would you still have the courage to believe in goodness after such betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, because in the final chapter, we'll close this story with a message of hope, a reminder of love, strength, and what it truly means to seek real connection in a digital world. July 2025. The state of Georgia officially closed the case of Lucille Anne McManus, the woman of light. Her killer, Brian McManus, was sentenced to life in prison without parole. No more excuses. No more cold, practiced words over a 911 call. Behind bars, he became only a shadow of himself. A lonely man, abandoned by the world, but out there, Miss Anne still lives on. In the memories of her family, in the hearts of her neighbors, and in every lesson this story has left behind. Her legacy lives on. From her tragedy, many woke up to a painful truth. Awareness campaigns for romance scams targeting seniors began spreading across Georgia. And on the white fence in front of her old home, people still lay flowers, light candles, and leave a handwritten sign that reads, Miss Anne, the woman who taught us that kindness is light, even in darkness. A final message: the ending of this story isn't just a verdict. It's a reminder: love, but don't love blindly. Trust, but never forget yourself. If someone makes you feel uneasy, listen to your intuition. It's often right before your mind dares to believe it. If Miss Anne's story touched your heart, please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and share this video to help protect those you care about. And don't forget to comment below. Do you believe trust can save us, or is it what makes us most vulnerable? The story ends here, but Miss Anne's light will never fade.